Today on Moviewallas, we talk about Mission Impossible Fallout, Christopher Robin, and BlacKkKlansman.
Hi, Trash Me.
And yes, as well.
Moviewallas is a weekly dose of film reviews, movie news, and general banter in theatres, on DVD, online streaming, or in the back of an airplane. If you love the movies, this show is for you. Greetings. Yassi, I've never
Yassi's doing hand gestures because we're on camera today.
Yes.
So he looks like one of those air stewards.
Yes. The exit might be behind you. Please remember, or they might be there two exits.
I was kind of reading
I'm so happy Yassi isn't
I was kind
an
of
air
reading
steward. I would hate to be on that plane.
cheesy salesman with the kind of
There's nothing wrong with the finger gun. A finger gun used judiciously is very
I
effective.
prefer to just use mine to pick my nose.
Oh, that too.
Lovely. So this is kind of a special episode because
Why is it special, Joe?
well, it's kind of arbitrary, right, in our podcast numbering system, but this does so happen to be episode 400 of Moviewallas.
400.
Thank you for just
Sorry.
distorting my. You messed up all my settings. Now, yeah, it's amazing. We first started doing this in 2010.
It
believe
doesn't
it or not.
feel like that long.
It doesn't.
I don't know that anyone has listened to all 400 episodes. And God
and
bless,
if you have,
included.
congratulations.
God bless you if you have. But yeah, it's kind of amazing to think back.
Although we have to give a shout out to Michelle, who listened to 4 hours of Moviewallas in a row.
So yeah, Michelle's a co-worker of, in
Why
fact,
would
all
she
of
do
ours
that?
at one point. But yes, we met her on Wednesday, I think, of last week. And so Rashmi, I didn't even hear what she said. 4 hours of Moviewallas?
4 hours of Moviewallas on a long drive.
I don't do that.
And I think maybe we put her to sleep.
I hope not.
I hope we're not
She
putting her
wasn't.
to sleep right now because I know she's an avid listener. So hi, Michelle.
Thank
Hi,
you,
Michelle.
Michelle. And thank you to everyone, really, who's been supporting us over the last, 8 years or so.
Years.
Somebody out there is listening. I know it because
You
the
started
podcasts
on
do
a
get
whim.
downloaded, and we did. We started over a weekend
Yeah.
after I think
2 years of talking about
2
it.
years of talking about it,
Yeah.
saying we should do a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do a podcast. Oh, yeah, well, maybe we should do a podcast. And I think it was mostly Yazdi's fault because
Yeah,
we
it
had-
was Yazdi's fault.
No.
It's totally
no,
Yazdi's fault.
you.
because every time we got together with you, Yazdi,
We would talk
about
movies,
movies.
yes.
Well, that's just
It's
how it
what we
is.
love.
Yeah.
No,
We
it's
would
great.
and we would feel educated by it and
Yes.
enlightened. So
Yes.
it was always kind of a
And
fun thing to do.
entertained.
And here we are, 8 years later, 400 episodes, multiple film festivals. I dread to think how many movies that is. It's probably 1,000 movies at this point, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Easily.
I-
Well, we watch, more than 100.
yeah. So yeah, that's
Plus video and, that's just on
Streaming
screen. Yeah.
and yeah.
that's a lot of talking, and it pretty much guarantees that none of us can ever run for office because there's so many of our opinions out in the world.
Yeah.
Should I ever run for office? I've got plenty of sound bites that somebody could string into something unpleasant.
I know. I was listening to one of our previous episodes and I thought I was kind of unkind. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want that showing. I wouldn't want that showing up on
See,
my
again, you guys
on
think
my
it's just for the show.
on my political campaign, like the day before the election.
Like I'm only unkind only on this show.
Yes,
She was like, "Am I barking orders now?"
So I am also going to attempt to put this episode out on video, and one of the things that we have in front of us today is a number of cameras. So
There's a lot of cameras, Joe.
well, look,
I didn't know we had that many cameras in the house. It's quite unnerving.
it's kind of I've collected them over time.
Yeah.
like with various kind
There's
of
Hoarder.
GoPro and
Hoarder.
I think we did do a video event a few years ago, the GMCLA Awards. So
Yep.
we had a couple
Available
of
on
cameras
YouTube.
that we
Yes.
got for
Yeah.
that. That was kind of fun. We
Super fun.
don't do that very often because it's a lot of work.
Yep.
But that was a very fun.
That was a
Yeah.
fun
thing to do.
event.
So yeah,
we
over,
got to wear
over
our
the years,
sunglasses on the red carpet.
Yes, and some good pictures. Yeah, we have some
yeah,
good
he
photographs.
looks like a kind of a badass bouncer in
Dude,
that.
yeah.
And you glammed up
So
too,
I did
Rashmi.
glam up,
You had-
yeah.
you
We
had-
should
did
make
you-
that our
I actually
Moviewallas
had my hair
cover
done.
photo.
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
doing my best to stay behind the camera.
Yeah.
But
Fun
it was-
event.
It was a fun event. So yeah. Well, here's to 400 more episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that should be as long as people keep downloading,
Well, I
listening.
hope people have as much fun listening as we have doing it, because it's super fun doing it.
It's mostly fun doing it.
Yeah. And I think and I think if
That's a lot coming from you, Joe.
No, I'm kidding. It's a lot of fun doing this.
and I think if people think that there's something we're doing which prevents them from listening to us all the time, they should let us know.
But they're not listening, so they don't know that we're asking them the question, Yazdi.
If a tree falls in the forest.
If you've made it this far, please send us an email. Let us know. Like, you know, are we talking too much about a movie that nobody's seen yet that doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
Or, you know, should
Or is
we
it just fun to listen to us
Yeah.
bantering?
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope the format works. I mean, I listen to a bunch of different movie review podcasts. Some are very short, some are like in depth. They go on for hours. You know, we try not to do that because,
Yeah.
and I tend to tune out of things that go on for half an hour is enough to discuss a movie in
I
detail.
think so.
Yeah,
But,
I do too.
yeah, well, okay, so let's wave at the camera. The main one.
Which one?
I know the one over there. So thank you everybody for supporting us. And
Yes.
let's get on with today's order of business. So 3 movies to talk about, but we've given ourselves some slack. So this will be a slightly longer podcast than you're used to, because we are going to include our regular segment. I can't find anything to watch on Netflix. Which
It's a lie.
I know, you know what?
There's
Totally
too
a
much
lie.
stuff to
We
watch.
started it because it was a common sentiment, right?
Mhm.
People would come to us and say, "What shall I watch on Netflix?" Because I sit there and I scroll through for hours and never pick anything. And
Yeah.
I have to admit, it's kind of fun to do that. But I find that there are some gems hidden out there that never seem to kind of surface in the interface. You scroll and you scroll, you never
Yep.
kind of see,
Yeah.
and you seem to run out of things to scroll through. We watch Netflix mainly on an Apple TV, so there's only so many. They probably show you a couple hundred movies, but there are
Yeah.
thousands in the catalog.
Yeah.
So
They're all just tucked away. And they don't pop
this
up
is our
on the- yeah.
opportunity to kind of help you. The algorithm tries to serve you what it thinks you would like,
Yeah.
but maybe there's stuff in our queue that might be of interest. So
Yeah, and we try to provide gems that we've really enjoyed.
Mhm.
yeah, and especially those little film festival gems that never seem to make it to the big screen
Yeah.
or have such a short stint on the cinema screen. That Netflix is a great way to Netflix VOD, that kind of thing is a great way to surface those movies. But again, because they may have no name actors or a first time director, they never pop out. So this is what we try and do.
Hmm.
And so what is in your queue this week?
Okay, I'm really excited to share mine. Mine is it's a movie called The Rover, and it's and I was just talking to Yazdi before we started the show, and I wanted to mention how it was kind of the same. Oh my goodness. It felt like it was in the same universe as Animal Kingdom that had Jackie Weaver in it, and I think she was actually nominated for an award.
Mhm. Best
That
supporting
year.
actress. Yeah.
Well, it turns out the director David Mickard actually directed Animal Kingdom too.
Mm.
Okay, so this is a brilliant movie. It's in a dystopian future, and it stars Robert Pattinson, and I think this was the first post vampire movie that he did, and it just does not feel like Robert Pattinson. So it's Robert Pattinson, Guy Pearce, Scoot McNairy, David Field, Anthony Hayes, Gillian Jones, and Susan Pryor. And believe it or not, it was screenwritten by Joel Egerton.
Oh
I
wow,
didn't know
our
that.
favorite Joel
So we
Egerton.
didn't know that, right? So this was released like 4 years ago.
So we spoke about Joel Egerton in the last podcast.
Yeah, we
with
did.
my movie pick, The Gift, and
The
I
Gift.
think
Yeah.
he's been in like a ton of different stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, so he's been really around.
He's been around for a long time. Anyway, The Rover is
Yes.
a great movie. It's very, I would describe it like, it feels very Americana, but it's set in Australia. Brilliant, like dusty
Yeah.
movie. It's kind of a thriller. You don't really know what's going on. It's kind of a heist that's gone wrong, but you don't quite know how they got there. Brilliant.
I remember not loving it quite as much as you did,
love
Rashmi,
this.
but it's it's a solid thriller.
Yeah. And I loved Animal Kingdom too, which came before it. So
Which-
unfortunately, that's not available on Netflix yet.
That's too bad. Yazdi.
So continuing on remarkable English language movies made outside of America, my pick is going to be a British movie called Locke, Locke. And Locke is one of those movies which reminds you that this is what cinema can be as well. And like a few other movies, it's pretty much a one-man show. For 90 minutes, all you're going to get to see is Tom Hardy in a car driving. And he takes off from one location and he's headed to someplace in a hurry. And through a series of phone calls that he makes while he's in the car, the story slowly opens up like layers of an onion. And you get to understand this man more. And it plays beautifully with your expectations that you don't know whether this guy is a decent person or a villain. And kind of, has you thinking a lot along the way as your judgment of this individual changes, and you can't help but judge him because he's the only person on camera. It's really 90 minutes of a person driving a car during a crisis in his life where he's headed somewhere, how it impacts his family, how it impacts his work. Brilliant 2-4 performance from Tom Hardy, directed by Stephen Knight. Really highly recommended.
This is one of those movies that it reminds me of the movie we saw a couple of years ago with Ryan Reynolds in
Buried, which we all love.
A man in a box for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And this one is a man in a car for 90 minutes, which sounds dreadful. I mean, honestly, when you think about the idea that this movie has a single actor, we wonder how any kind of plot and drama can be created, and yet the movie is so effective through its use of dialogue, through Hardy's performance. Yeah, terrific pick.
And yours, Joe?
So, mine's not really a movie. It's I know, right? It's
a banana.
Yeah. It's a piece of art.
It is a piece of art. It's Hans Zimmer live in Prague, and it's the live concert recording of a tour that Hans Zimmer did about a year ago. He visited several cities, and including a couple in the US, and San Diego was one of them. I'm a huge fan of movie music in general. I mean, I listen to all sorts of music.
Especially Chris Nolan movies.
Well, Chris Nolan, but that's because he always uses Hans Zimmer, and I've been a fan of Hans Zimmer long before Nolan was using him. I mean, he has such an amazing back catalogue of movie soundtracks from Driving Miss Daisy, Crimson Tide. It's kind of interesting with movie music. There's a number of notable names. You have the James Horner and
John Williams,
and the American Beauty guy. That guy can't think of him.
Thomas
Newman. Thank you. And Hans Zimmer is another one of those that I will actually pay special attention to a movie that is scored by Zimmer.
Yeah.
Just because I love what he does with music. He's very good at the dramatic stuff as well as the kind of softer stuff. And we saw the concert about a year ago here in San Diego, and it was a phenomenal experience.
Fantastic.
I mean, I hope anyone out there that's a fan of movie music, and was interested in seeing it, got a chance to see the tour while it was around, because it wasn't very well publicized, I thought.
Which is why, and if you didn't,
it's on Netflix.
The show is the exact show.
They've recorded the whole show, and it's not quite the same as being there live, but it's a really good recording of it. They capture some of the more dramatic moments, so I'll save them. It is very much about the music. It's Hans Zimmer and his orchestra, and a seemingly endless number of people on stage. He has a full choir, a full orchestra, and he toured with these people. He sometimes used local, but it's got a lot of movie favorites. Obviously, the Dark Knight trilogy.
The Thin Red Line was the one I loved.
Was very good.
Very
he scored
good.
The Thin Red Line, which was amazing. They had the Man of Steel music, the Gladiator theme, which is again one of my favorite scores. So check it out, Hans Zimmer live in Prague. It's available on Netflix, and it's totally worth 90 minutes of your time. And
in fact, we got sucked in again.
I would
trying
recommend
to do some paperwork. And then Joe was like, let's put this on just to kind of drown out the noise. But then we got sucked in watching it beat the purpose.
I kind of did it to be background, but the material is so engaging that I honestly think the best way to do it is, sit down in a room, put some headphones on, or, darken the room and focus on it, because it really does give you the experience of being there. So it's a really, really well-produced recording. So again, Hans Zimmer live in Prague. We have Yazdi's pick, which was Locke.
Locke.
And Rashmi, you...
The Rover.
The Rover. Terrific. Plenty to watch on Netflix and other streaming services, so no excuse if you can't get out to the movies. Do check one of those out. All right, so we better get on because we have 3 movies to talk about. They are Mission Impossible, Christopher Robin, and BlacKkKlansman. I think we've both seen the first 2 of those, right? And Yazdi, I think you weren't able to make the daytime screening of BlacKkKlansman.
Because they only had a screening in the day.
I actually took a vacation day to watch it because I was so excited to watch this.
So, should we start with...
Why don't we start with Christopher Robin?
Okay, let's do that. And,
okay, a working-class family man now, Christopher Robin encounters his childhood friend, Winnie the Pooh, who helps him rediscover the joys of life. This is directed by Mark Foster, and it's written by Alex Ross Perry, Tom McCarthy, Alison Schroeder, but it's based on a story by Greg Brooker and Mark Steven Johnson. Of course, it's based on the original characters, which were Beloved and written by A.A. Milne. And it stars Ewan McGregor as Christopher Robin, Jim Cummings, Haley Atwell, Toby Jones, Brad Garrett, and Peter Capaldi.
He played... Why am I blacking out? The British show, the sci-fi...
Doctor Who?
Doctor Who. He played
Yes.
Doctor Who for several seasons.
He is Rabbit in this. So is this worth your time? Joe, you look very ready to start. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I am and I'm not. I mean, I think my feelings about this movie are readily summarized by saying it was okay. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Winnie the Pooh universe. It's something that, as a kid, I guess, I never got the book at the right moment in childhood to kind of fall in love with the stories as many people do. And I understand why the characters are so beloved, but they're not especially beloved to me. And so, as a result, the movies and the animations and all the fuss about Winnie the Pooh is not quite on my wavelength. But nonetheless, I thought this movie was very well executed. It had its moments that I thought were, it was a parable, right? It was, work less, spend more time with your family kind of movie. And I thought the moments of, Pooh and the various characters interacting with the real world and in the 100-Acre Wood were very well done. I think there were some, very beautiful moments. And I think for the first time, I kind of understood the wisdom of Pooh, right? I never got that before in any of the movies. I thought he was just kind of a cute, soft-talking bear. But there's wisdom in those words. And I think that movie got that across very well. So it was an okay film. It's definitely one that I'd recommend for family viewing. Not necessarily one that's going to remain with me for much longer after this podcast.
Yelsi. Now, did you read Pooh when you were younger?
I did. Maybe not all of it, but I read a couple books when I was maybe in... It's a very curious film because so off the bat, I like it. I like it a lot. I would recommend it. And I think I didn't realize this until you explicitly mentioned this, Joe. But yeah, this is a movie that you can recommend for family viewing. Although by the same token, I agree with everything you've said. By the same token, the movie has a sense of melancholy through
very much
most
so,
of
yeah.
it. It starts in a place of sadness, and it kind of maintains that. And I think the feeling through the entire movie is one of you have to eventually grow up, and you have to eventually, make hard decisions. But that is not reason for you to forget your childhood. I think, Tigger and Eeyore and Pooh and everybody represent, I think, your innocence of childhood, and innocence in sense of your morals, innocence in the way of seeing the world in simpler terms. And I think the movie kind of, at its best, harkens back to kind of embracing that and not have become cynical when you've grown up. But to kind of carry that message across, it I think is pretty dark, through parts. So that I was kind of surprised by. The other thing I want to mention is that the previous incarnations of Pooh, which have been mostly animated, all the creatures look animated. In this movie, they very curiously made a choice to make them all look like stuffed animals, which seems like a very odd choice, but it kind of actually grows on you because you kind of see them as living, talking, stuffed animals. And I again, it was a very gutsy thing to do, but it works. And just to put this movie in context, and we can talk more about it, I compared this movie right from the start when I saw Pooh for the first time to something like Paddington. And I've seen Paddington 1 and Paddington 2, and both of those movies are absolutely etched in my mind. Paddington 2 is one of my favorite movies of this year. This one will not be. So It's not that class. It's not in that category, even emotionally or visually. But for what it is, it's pretty remarkable.
So I think this movie does a beautiful job of creating nostalgia for those of us who are a certain age. But overall, it's not a good movie because for me, it remains too stoic. Yes, you use the word melancholy. For me, it's stoic. It made me extremely emotional, right? So I actually had tears rolling down my eyes. I don't know if either of you saw.
I did.
I did, yeah.
But the emotion came from a place of how easily we abandon our childhood, as opposed to, oh, it's so sad that Christopher Robin's grown up and he's forgotten his friends. I just think it's too cold as a movie, and I think it's terribly cast. I didn't buy Ewan McGregor as a grown-up Christopher Robin, and I didn't like Pooh's voice. That's not how I imagined Pooh speaking. Yeah, and I read a lot of Pooh growing up, and I actually have a book on our bookshelf called The Tao of Pooh. Pooh is so wise, right? Pooh is kind of like the original Yoda to me.
Pooh sounds like an old woman in the movie.
Yeah, and that's not how
does
I
he sound in
wanted-
the animated movies? Because he sounded spot
It's
on.
exactly like that in the animated movies.
Okay.
But when I first saw, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't
No,
want to.
go on.
The voice of Pooh, the first time I saw it on screen, never matched what I had in my head.
Correct.
Never. Yeah.
And I think that casting is central to the movie, so I didn't think it was very, very well cast. But an example is, look, I had a penguin growing up, a penguin who I dearly loved. I even took him to university. If my penguin...
Not a real one, I hope.
If my penguin appeared to me in San Diego in my office, I would literally poo my pants.
Right.
Christopher Robin was very cool with Pooh just appearing on a bench in London. So...
Well, in fairness, he wasn't. He freaked out at first.
Well, but what I'm saying is that reaction is sort of... it's representative of the movie.
Sure,
right?
okay.
I mean, it just didn't have the emotion. Like if I met my penguin, I would like cry and hug it.
I see. Okay. So you thought he was too cold.
Yeah, it was just very cold and distant. I felt very cold and distant.
I kind of, that's deliberate. I'm not sure if it's deliberate or if it's just an oversight. I almost saw it as a reflection of how far he had come from his childhood, that he failed to connect with something.
Yeah.
That he was so...
he just wanted the bear to go away.
Had been closed off,
Yeah.
and he was so that like this wall had been built around him. But yeah.
What do you think kids will make of this? Because I mean, obviously, it's a character that's aimed at children in some ways.
I mean, I think they'll find something to like about it. And look, I talk about it. I'm doing a joke. I'm talking about it like I hated the movie, and I didn't hate it. I just wanted so much more from it. Given this was, a rendering of a man in his adulthood meeting the friends who he grew up with, and imaginary or not, it didn't spark that joy for me. It wasn't joyful, but I think the calamity and the physical humor of the movie will entice kids enough. And certainly there were a lot of kids in the screening that we were in, and they seemed to enjoy and laugh.
They seemed very engaged.
Yeah, they seemed very
from
engaged.
my perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that they were, having fun with like lots of gags and jokes, but they seemed very drawn to the characters, which I think is half the challenge here.
And I was just really happy that a red balloon isn't something sinister like it is in It. So I'm really happy that the red balloon has made a comeback.
I was
going to
ask if that was a deliberate reference to kind of,
I think
by the Red Balloon Sales Company.
I think Pooh predates Stephen King.
Yeah, I do too.
Or A.A. Milne predates Stephen King.
Okay, maybe that's why it used the red balloon.
Probably.
Because it was a way to draw children in
Correct.
based on the lore of Pooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, about Ewan McGregor, I mean, you wake me up at 2:00 in the night and you ask me to join the Ewan McGregor parade, and I will do that. I will
I
bring
know
my
you're a
cymbals and
complete
drums.
fan, yeah.
So I'm a complete fan of him, but I agree with you. He is miscast here. I don't know who else I would cast, but Christopher Robin in the books is somebody who is philosophical as a child, who's trying to figure out right from wrong, and he's learning about friendship. And I, the way he's played, I don't know, it just didn't feel right to me. The adult Ewan McGregor didn't seem to me connected with the storybooks that I had read as a child.
Right.
Somehow there seemed to be a disconnect. Like, the third part of Moonlight seemed to me like a totally different actor than the first two parts. So it kind of was a
Don't
disconnect
be
for me.
on Moonlight.
I won't be
in
on
a
Moonlight.
Pooh Bear
in a Pooh Bear
movie.
The other thing I wanted to mention was that it's interesting that, ostensibly this is a movie about kids, and we were just talking about this, but I think the central message of the movie is very much for adults.
Yes.
That, it is only when you do nothing that it leads to the best of something. And it's kind of urging all of us to kind of not be so consumed minute by minute in the everyday life that we've forgotten to just rest and kind of, take in the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a message which really resonates for me. So I really like that piece, but I don't think any 6, 7, 8, 9, 12-year-old is going to probably get that too much.
And a lot of my favorite kids films have that duality, right? You have kids and adults that see completely different movies. And this might be one of them, right? I think, as again, we saw the kids very engaged by the animated characters here, and maybe less able to relate to the adult story going on. But that's fine, because parents take their kids to see movies too, and they should be able to enjoy that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the movie, like Donald Gleason. I think would have been a great Christopher Robin, but he was just in the movie about Goodbye Christopher Robin last year. Right. But I think, to me, that sort of very lean, very quiet, reflective type of contemporary actor would have been a far better Christopher Robin than Ewan McGregor. He's just so badly cast for me.
And Haley Atwell, who plays his wife, she's too young to be playing mom to 2 kids. She's Captain America's wife.
One kid. Yeah, and I didn't even like the kid. I mean, I was sort of just not connected with the movie at all. I did like the production. I think the production design really is excellent. Good. Yes. And I did like how the toys have been they're almost bobbly and raggedy, and they look like they've been played with. That was a really good choice. Again, a bit muted. Like, I wanted the colors to be a bit brighter. Like Tigger, I wanted to be orange. Tigger's always orange in all the colorful illustrations. But Piglet was so cute. I just wanted to hug them all.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, one of the things that I, not being a big fan of this particular universe, got from the movie was just how the imbued characteristic of each. That Piglet was fearful of heffalumps, and that Kangaroo and Roo was always asking the questions, like very innocently. Yeah. So they were wonderfully rendered.
Yeah, and Eeyore is properly depressed.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, that was so.
Brad Garrett was great.
He was great. Yeah.
Well, he was just Brad Garrett, unfortunately, and I thought that was the one voice that I decoupled from the character, just because it's so characteristically Brad Garrett.
Yeah.
That
was a good Brad Garrett. Okay, let's wrap this one up. So, Yazdi, you go first.
6 out of 10. It's not a bad movie. It's a good movie. It has really, really good intentions. I love how it's been physically rendered. Like I said, the production design is exquisite.
Yeah.
At times it does get a little bit twee, but I think, the end message of the movie really resonated for me. I think everybody will get something out of it. I can't think of anybody I would not recommend this to. A slightly stingy 6 out of 10. Again, nowhere nearly on par with what was accomplished with the Paddington movies.
Yeah.
That's just a whole other level.
Joe?
Another 6 from me as well. I mean, I think the movie's reasonably well executed. It didn't reach me emotionally, but I think everyone will get something out of it. And again, I mentioned it earlier, but it is very much a parable that in the vein of many a Christmas movie is kind of predictable. So again, nice family viewing, but not a classic.
Yeah, I was going to say if it's a rainy afternoon, a really rainy afternoon, or you're looking to escape from the AC and sit in a cinema and cool down, and there's absolutely nothing else on, watch this. For me, it's a 5 out of 10, very average.
Wow.
I wanted this to be so much more, although it really made me cry.
Okay.
I think, by the way, Mike Nichols should sue them because the last ending of the movie is straight out of The Working Girl. That's all I would say.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't remember that.
Anyway.
I mean, it's very reminiscent of a lot of movies.
Okay, 2 more movies, Mission Impossible and BlacKkKlansman.
BlacKkKlansman.
Okay, so Yazdi, I think
We'll
you're going to tell us about this.
Mission Impossible.
Yes, definitely. So BlacKkKlansman is the latest from
Spike
Lee. Yeah. So it's a Spike Lee joint, as all of his movies are called. And this particular movie is, I think, one of his rare movies which is based on an actual event, because most of his movies are, fictional. And I love that the poster for the movie says, based on a crazy, outrageous, incredible true story. And the story in question, which is just mind-boggling that this is something which is set 60 years ago, is still relevant right now. And it's the story of Ron Stallworth, an African-American police officer from Colorado who successfully managed to infiltrate the local Ku Klux Klan and become the head of the local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. And this one comes with a lot of fanfare. It did exceptionally well at the spring film festivals where it was shown, and it has a crackerjack cast, which includes Alec Baldwin, John David Washington, who is Denzel Washington's son. It also has Adam Driver, who has not been in a bad film as far as I'm concerned, as well as Topher Grace, who we haven't seen in a long time. And I think the last film that Spike Lee made was Chirac, was it?
Chirac,
yeah.
Which I really liked, even though it was so rough around the edges and kind of a little wobbly. But
so bad.
I'm really looking forward to this one, and I'm sorry I missed the screening because they, in their great wisdom, decided to have it only during the day. But as soon as it's released, I'm going to rush out and watch it. So tell me, should I run fast, or it's okay if I just do a even run?
Yeah. So. Although the cookies were really good. Yazdi bought some cookies around.
He bought 4, one for each 100 episodes of Moviewallas.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are on our Instagram.
They are on the Instagram
in
now.
our bellies.
And in
I
our bellies.
stuffed mine through my mouth and tried to suck on it really quickly. Okay, so remember when we came out of Get Out? Some of us knew that we'd seen something really special. That's how I feel about this movie.
Wow.
Spike Lee delivers in droves. And where he ends, the charmingly wonderful John David Washington takes over. And he's helped out a lot by Adam Driver and Topher Grace. This is a well-made, well-paced, high-tension, important story that I'm sad to say, like you said, Yazdi, is incredibly important and relevant to today. Most important, it's entertaining and it's very comedic. As it should be, I think. Bravo, 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 and welcome back, Spike Lee. This is incredible.
I mean, this is the same David Duke from the movie that we are talking about right now in 2017. This movie played out in 1957.
Correct.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't true, you'd be sort of scratching your head and thinking, this is an amazing story. This would never have happened.
Well, I mean, the central theme of this is irony, right? The BlacKkKlansman. And I think the movie embraces that irony all the way throughout its running time with humor that's brought out of these, remarkable, ridiculous, based on a true story type. And I'm actually curious to kind of research how much of the events are kind of, created for, comedic purpose on camera and how many of them are true. But
apparently most until the very end.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the hilarious Ron Stallworth is clearly a spiky character, and the movie is based on his book, so
Correct.
it's very much told from his perspective. And as a police officer, essentially, launching an investigation against the Klan by, impersonating a Klan's member. It's just a remarkable thing that he kind of, was able to execute here. But the movie never takes itself too seriously, even though it has some very serious moments in it. I think it's got some very serious messages. Spike Lee can be very hit or miss for me, and I think when he misses, which is unfortunately for me more often than not.
Correct. Me too.
They're really kind of missed opportunity, because you think the premise here is terrific. Here he nails it. I mean, he's got gold with which he can mine, and he does. He exploits the idea, the concepts behind this movie brilliantly well. He casts the movie incredibly well. He doesn't do any of those gimmicky Spike Lee type camera movements. So there's no people walking down the sidewalk, side by side with the camera kind of following. There's none of that nonsense.
Or breaking of the fourth wall or anything that he's done.
So it feels very traditional. It doesn't in many ways feel like a Spike Lee movie. But yeah, terrific stuff. It gets rather political at the end, and I always get frustrated when movies get so political. He's very clear about his political persuasions, because I find that it might be off-putting to an audience that might otherwise be enlightened by it. I feel like there will be a certain contingent of, I'll just say, the right-leaning folks will have a hard time with this movie simply because,
and they should.
Well, right, but I mean, this is a frustrating thing about the polarization of politics in America today. I think there are people who would, have a couple of light bulb moments by seeing something like this, but won't, because it has a very strong political message, particularly in its last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think, remember how much I gushed about Sorry to Bother You? This is even better than that.
Thank you, yes.
Too absurd, right? We said this during that show. That sells a similar message in some ways, but it's hidden behind absurd, and I don't think that's for everyone. In fact, I don't think it's for many people. This is not like that. This is not in your face, but like you said, Joe, the politics of the movie are completely on show. They're not hidden at all. But I think the cleverness of this movie is that each of the characters, especially that of Ron Stallworth, is so incredibly likable. Even the bad characters are likable in some way.
That's very true.
Right? So you feel even the horrible, crazy ones, there's something very likable and enjoyable to watch about them. And they feel so well formed that even when a character comes on screen for just 2 lines, you know who that person is. You know their background story, and you know what they're there to represent. So that's very smart about this movie. And
can I just interject? Because I mean, that's a great point. It's very sympathetic to its bad guys, and it's sympathetic in the sense of it doesn't portray them as evil as it does stupid, right? Like there's a kind of comic stupidity about the Klansman in this movie that they're kind of likable, right? These are kind of nice guys who are misguided in the most horrible way.
Yeah.
But there's that's a really, really funny observation, because I never found myself thinking this person is despicable and needs to go to jail immediately forever. Even though they get themselves into some ridiculous, quite violent capers.
Correct.
But they all feel like bungling.
Correct. But even the ones that aren't bungling, I feel like although it's not fair necessarily, and it's not a very balanced portrayal of them, that would be an interesting movie just for us to, those of us who aren't sympathetic to their cause.
Well, they self-parody them, I mean, if you watch any real behind-the-scenes thing about the Klansmen, there are those that are frightening and evil.
People will wear white sheets on
those
themselves,
that are just
right? I mean, yeah. But it's done in a really, I think, as balanced as it can be, and I think that it's going to be a lightning rod. Look, I think it's a lightning rod for what's happening now. And I think it's interesting that many in the movie are actually still alive today. And in fact, I actually was really fascinated and did some reading because I couldn't believe that it was real. And I wanted to kind of find out more about it and how they pulled everything off. And remember that we're told during the movie that they were told to rip up everything related to the case. And so actually David Duke has denied this ever happening.
As I'm sure he would.
Of course he will, because it makes him look not so great. But even the way that Topher Grace has portrayed David Duke is pretty good. I mean, it does make you, I hate to say I'm sympathetic to him, but it starts to give you an understanding of where the thought comes from, right or wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, again,
and that's really difficult to do.
Yeah,
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Spike Lee did it.
And again, I'm saying this without having seen the movie, although I would have loved to have seen this movie while we are discussing it. But maybe the point he's making is that, and I often notice this, is that it's when evil is hiding in plain sight, when it's amongst the banal and everyday, is when it's the chilling. If somebody came out like looking like a monster, you'd be like, oh my God, monster, kill him. But if it was somebody who looks like your uncle or your brother or whatever, and they are doing monstrous things, then that's harder for us to kind of reconcile these two aspects of, because in every other aspect they're just completely normal, regular people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's we described it a little wrong. I mean, I think yes, I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I don't know that that's what this movie is doing. Maybe it is, and maybe that point was lost on me, but I think it's really to me its deepest message is ignorance and education, it's and lack of, I mean, honestly, I think to me it just feels like oftentimes people aren't necessarily driven at their core by some belief. They're just kind of part of a gang, this, they're
accepted by a certain group of people.
It's kind of what we do, right? We don't like black people. I don't know why, but we just hate them. There's this kind of, anyway, but maybe
is it an angry film? Because his best films and his worst films have been very angry films, like Do the Right Thing and Crooklyn and Jungle Fever and all of these movies, even Inside Man,
Malcolm
X. They're very angry movies, and I think he does best when he kind of, as a filmmaker, when he's demonstrating this indignation, like righteous indignation. This is what's happening. Homes are burning, streets are burning. This is not an angry film, then.
I would say it's a restrained, appropriate angerness that will definitely leave. You will leave the theater if you are not sympathetic to the cause. Then you will leave the cinema angry, and especially because of the bit at the end.
I was going to say, I mean,
that's the piece that I think is the twister.
It's a very restrained movie. And then it all comes out in the last 15 minutes. And
we won't spoil what that 15 minutes is.
But the kind of thing that you're talking about there, Yazdi, where he kind of unleashes his true feelings, is left till the end of this movie. And it's done with a montage. It's done with kind of some. Well, I
was going to say,
let's not talk. But it emerges at the end, and I think a lot of what's been written about the movie, I think, is captured by that ending. So, when I look down the critics' consensus here on Rotten Tomatoes, there's a lot of impassioned and angry and we need its anger right now. It's an angry, and it's actually not. In my opinion, it felt very
comedic, dramedy,
constrained. Ironic, again, for me, the central theme is irony,
Which is good, because I think of late some of his movies which have not worked is because he's let his anger get the better of him.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
so I
agree.
think.
I mean, that's
so no,
why
yeah.
Chirac for me failed, but this
Yeah.
isn't a podcast about Chirac. I just wanted to get a dig into Yazdi because he liked it.
I did. And by the way, he's made a movie. He's made for Amazon, I think. Or maybe Netflix. He's did this 10-episode series called She's Gotta Have It, which is based on the movie She's Gotta Have It, which was one of his early movies that he made.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to see it, but I haven't gotten around to doing so. But so he hasn't been twiddling his thumbs.
No.
He's been very busy.
I mean, I can
Yes.
wind this one up. Look,
Yes.
it's hard to anger and entertain, and it's even harder to make a movie that talks about now that was written in the past. BlacKkKlansman delivers. It delivers the most since the death of Stalin for me. 10 out of 10.
Oh,
I love this
Wow.
movie, and I can't wait to go and see this again. I want to see this again.
Wow.
So groovy. It's so groovy.
I had no idea you liked it that much. That's amazing.
Such a groovy movie.
So I like this very much as well. I mean, I don't think it stands up to some of his best works. And again, you know, for me, those are movies like Jungle Fever and Do the Right Thing. I think it lacks the kind of bite that those movies do until the end, where it's, you know, it's just teeth everywhere. But you know, I struggle to give this a 9, so I'm going to give it an 8. But it's kind of one of those 8.75s that is rounded down. It just doesn't. It has its message, but it doesn't feel especially remarkable. But you know, there we go. 8 out of 10. A solid viewing, and I'm going to stew on this for a while. I think I knocked a point off because everything did come at the end in the way that it did, and I like things to be a little less biased politically. I want people to kind of make their own opinions.
Yay, the
I
cat
prefer
just
those.
came on the desk.
So yes, I'm sure the cat's on one of the cameras here. We have plenty of cameras lurking around. So yes, welcome, Callie, to the podcast. You're on video, you know.
you're a star.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on then to movie number 3 of the week, which is Mission Impossible Fallout. And I'm going to try and do the almost impossible task of introing this movie. So in the lead up to Mission Impossible Fallout, I said to Rashmi and Yeti, because both of you have been huge fans of this series, I've always found them entertaining but completely disposable. So I found myself thinking, I don't recall what any of the movies are about. I asked Yazdi, and he was able to recall the plots of the various ones. But honestly, all I can remember from any of them is, you know, Tom Cruise on a string, Tom Cruise on a building, Tom Cruise underwater. So, you know, I just didn't remember what any of them were about. They all felt like, you know, gobbledygook spy stuff. So I kind of...
Didn't we watch the Mission Impossible
so
movies in 7 minutes?
Yeah, IGN.com, which is a website that I follow on various kind of entertainment stuff, had like a Mission Impossible in 5 minutes type review, and it reminded me roughly of what was going on, but still felt like mostly nonsense. So this is the latest entry in that series, obviously starring Tom Cruise. It also was written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, which apparently, I didn't know this, but is the first time a director has been invited back to do a second MI movie. So he also directed Mission Impossible Rogue Nation,
which was the Burj
preceding one.
I think it was the last one, but
the last one
they've kind of famously hopped from director to director because they've wanted each movie to have ing own unique feel. But he was invited back to do this next entry. The movie stars Tom Cruise, Henry Cavill, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, Sean Harris, Angela Bassett, of course, Alec Baldwin, Wes Bentley. There's a huge star cast in Michelle Monaghan. There's a huge cast in this movie, and I'm just going to read its Rotten Tomatoes précis. I am able to describe the plot of this one a little better from memory, but I'll go with what it says.
Go with memory. No?
The best intentions often come back to haunt you. Mission Impossible Fallout finds Ethan Hunt and his IMF team, along with some familiar allies, in a race against time after a mission gone wrong. That's
specific.
I think that's all that needs to be said. So why don't you guys tell me what you think of Mission Impossible Fallout?
Yeah, I think...
as you abseil down the walls.
Is that what?
Cling to the
Oh,
microphone.
actually, there is something I
Yes.
want to mention. Much has been made of the fact that Tom Cruise does his own stunts in this movie. I don't know whether it's a promotional effort behind this movie or whether it's a YouTube channels to which I subscribe, but I've seen a ton of behind the scenes footage of him doing his own stunts, flying helicopters.
Infamously, he told Henry Cavill that he couldn't do one. Apparently.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know about that. But yeah, he broke his ankle. But he jumped out of planes. You know, so a lot of what we do see on screen in this movie is Tom Cruise. It's not a stunt double. It's not a lookalike. Well, let's talk about that. So, anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Yeti.
I think Joe's doing what Yazdi did to Joe the other week. Remember when you wouldn't let him speak? Now you're not letting Yazdi speak.
No, that's quite all right.
I keep thinking of things to add.
It's not even your turn yet.
But the Yazdi is dead.
But the Yazdi's gone. Joe,
hey, wait.
Joe killed him. But the Joe killed but the Yazdi.
This is our 400th episode. I'm allowing myself to indulge.
You may indulge.
Okay.
You may indulge.
Sure.
So I always say that everything that ails Hollywood right now can be put in one word, which is sequels. And I hate sequels. And I hate that, people have become lazy and we keep going and watching the same thing over and over again. And I'm tired of, Predator is being remade. And, I'm tired of just the same thing over and over again.
There's no original franchises.
Yeah, there's
Infinite
no original
superheroes.
content. Yeah. And it seems like the big studios only want to invest in property which people are already familiar with. They're just playing it safe essentially. But I think the only series for which I make an exception to my own feeling is the Mission Impossible films. Some of the Fast and Furious movies off and on have been pretty good, in their later incarnations. But I think Cruise started off with the original was directed by Brian De Palma, and then the second one was directed by John Chu. The third one was directed by J.J. Abrams, who has been a producer on every one since then. And then fourth one was done by Brad Bird. That Brad Bird, from Pixar. And then fifth and sixth are done with Christopher McQuarrie. So these are, high top-notch filmmakers that he enlists to make these movies. And I think in particular the last three, Ghost Protocol,
Rogue Nation, and now Fallout, I think those three form a really good trilogy of exceptional craft in filmmaking. And I think this one in particular, it has just absolute gobbledygook for plot. Okay, it's nonsense. It's just nonsense.
Aren't they all?
Well, I don't know. Some like the last one where Rebecca Ferguson's character was introduced in Rogue Nation. I thought the story of that held together really well. There's that scene in the opera house, and I can kind of play all the scenes in my head because it all sticks together. This one I've seen twice now. I saw it at the screening, and then I saw it again on Friday.
Not with MoviePass though.
Not with MoviePass. We'll talk about that.
We keep promising to speak about MoviePass,
but. It just the plot is just nonsense. I'm really, really disappointed that they couldn't be bothered to, make something a little bit tighter. But I put that all aside and I just look at the movie as its need to entertain you. And I think in its need to entertain you, it's at the pinnacle. It's really something else. I mean, there is a lot of people have already done this in their reviews for Mission Impossible Fallout by comparing it of all things to the last Mad Max. But I wouldn't make in terms of how great the action
Fury
is.
Road.
Oh, okay.
Fury Road. But I wouldn't go that far. But what I would say is, like that movie, this one uses so little CGI, or it seems to use so little CGI that everything looks real to me. I mean, that's Tom Cruise running, that's Tom Cruise on the motorbike without a helmet, that's Tom Cruise jumping out of a plane in a single take as he's coming down without a parachute. There's, so
flying a helicopter.
Yeah, so it just
falling out of a helicopter.
Flying a helicopter stuck in a mountain, whatever. It makes you feel. It made me anxious because it felt so real, and I think therein lies, the reason why it's made more money right now than any other previous Mission Impossible movie. It's just a fine piece of craft. Rashmi?
Great action sequences, lots of double and triple crossing, the old gang back together again, face masks a la Scooby-Doo, breathless and thrilling helicopter sequences. Can I remember what happened in terms of
You
story?
need to watch it again.
No way! But will you have a terrific time at the movies? Hell yeah. You will, and you'll be excited when the next Mission Impossible sequel comes out. I love this movie.
Yeah.
There's nothing not to love. Is it memorable? Who cares? It's just great.
And it's hard to make a sixth.
We're not going to let Joe speak now.
It's hard to make a sixth movie in a franchise.
You can tell from his face, and luckily our viewers can see now, viewers and listeners can see the disdain on his face already.
But how often can you see say it's bona fide great sixth entry into a franchise?
The only thing I'll say is that,
and I have many problems with it.
Like Bourne Identity, James Bond, all of the other ones except John Wick. This stands out.
Yeah,
this feels like the bar. Joe.
Okay, Joe. You may poop on it now.
Well, I mean, I think it's clear that of this franchise, I'm the one that's liked this the least of all of the Moviewallas. I think Rogue Nation, others, I always felt like capers, but I never knew what was going on. And I'm surprised that the two of you are saying that the plot of this one seems like gobbledygook, because it's the only one that I've ever been able to follow. There are some missing nuclear cores that can make a bomb, and they follow them around the world. There's nothing more to it.
It's very similar to the last Marvel movie to me.
But there's none of this kind of double crossing intrigue.
What's with the White Widow and what's with all that? I didn't understand.
What's going
I saw
on
it
with
twice. I still don't understand the White Widow.
3 nuclear warheads. That's
They're the
all,
middlemen.
That's it. All of the rest of the stuff is nonsense. This is a pursuit movie, right?
Yes.
So for me, the plot kind of held together coherently. And I'm going to say this right now. I mean, this is the best of the series as far as I'm concerned.
Really?
Yeah, I loved every moment of
yes.
this movie. It clicks together so perfectly. So I hadn't heard the Fury Road comparisons, but now that you mentioned it, it's absolutely the same thing. It's a number of well executed action set pieces, one after the other.
It doesn't stop.
Strung together with a wonderful story. I think the performances in this are excellent, and
wonderful story, really.
I thought this. I really enjoyed this
From
one.
the man who didn't like Sorry to Bother You.
Right. And he finds this one. Okay, no, go on. Please go on. Just like to chide you. Yes.
My favorite entry in this by far, it's probably going to be in my top 5 movies of the year. I mean, I just thought this was, I can't wait to see it again. I think the stunt sequences were very engaging, but I didn't feel like they were there as filler for plot. I think the movie is very well crafted around these amazingly choreographed stunt sequences. I was never lost. I never knew who was after who, and never lost sight of who was after who and for what and for when. And
I just didn't care.
I smiled at the ridiculousness of a particular battle on the side of a cliff, but I never lost sight of what was the objective, and there wasn't a moment where I didn't really believe in what was happening either, despite the ridiculousness of it all. Falling out of a plane without doing a halo jump, one of those high altitude, low opening kind of parachute jump. I never lost sight of any of that. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, I just how do you build on this? How do you do a next one?
More of the same. I mean, it's the only thing you can do.
And it's just so enjoyable. I love that they don't even take themselves so seriously. It felt like the first few were very serious. And I think, Joe, when we were going through that 7-minute what happened, I think I realized there are actually 2 in the middle that I didn't watch. 2 or 3 in the middle, but the last 3 have been so fun.
So
and
satisfying.
I love the humor, and Simon Pegg is is great in them, and and I'm always like looking for who's wearing the mask, and how they
there's
use that
always, yeah.
gimmick is so
Well, there's always a
fun,
moment
right?
that they always pull it off where you see a scene and the scene isn't what the scene appears to be.
Oh, there's always that there's a fake artifice, that something
Yeah.
has been created. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that the timing of that particular device in this movie
It's so wise.
was really well done,
It was
because
so good.
I didn't see it coming, and I did have the jaw drop when
Yeah.
the reveal came.
Yeah.
So I thought,
And it comes, and it's a quick one, right? It like it's instant gratification as soon as you're there. I mean, as soon as the music starts, as soon as the credits start running at the beginning, I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, that original Laszlo
Was it as thrilling
score.
when you watched it the second time, even though you
Yes.
knew what was
Yes.
coming?
Yeah,
Although you
because I was
didn't,
just
because
trying
you're
to
like
understand.
trying to understand what you watched a week ago.
No, it did. I mean, that original Laszlo score, na, 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 I don't know, I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, so good.
And he's been hiring other music directors to kind of take on that riff and do it better. And in this one, they use a lot of drums. There's a lot of drumming, but it's the same. When you have like something gold like that,
Yeah.
then you can just try it with different instruments, and it
Yeah.
still works really well. I have a lot of quips with the movie. I mean, what's going on with that, Henry Cavill porn stash? I mean, what was it? Was so weird, and I don't know. It was.
That's the thing that bothered
that
you.
bothered me. And the other thing which really bothered me is this is a movie in 2018, right?
Yeah.
This is supposed to be the epitome of high tech and high, he jumps out of things and whatever. And what is the ending left to? The ending is left to cutting the red wire very closely while you're cutting the green wire, and you're turning screws counterclockwise. Really? In 2018, we're still talking about detonating bombs? And I know that there's no other device that we know of which creates more tension than, a bomb which is going to go off in 10 seconds or whatever. And they even joke about it. They're like, oh yeah, this one, the two are attached. Once it starts, you cannot stop it. But I was a little dismayed, like, come on.
But look, I think if everything was technological, then it would just be such a boring movie.
Right.
The fact that you have to do something physical and the stakes are so high at that point makes it
Yes.
so much more enjoyable to watch.
Right.
And of course, nothing's going to happen, right? And, well, I mean,
well, this is the thing. I mean,
unless you're in the Marvel universe.
I was going to say, we know that the IMF is going to prevail, right? Tom Cruise and Ethan Hawke character. And that's the wonderful thing
Ethan
about the way...
Hunt.
Ethan Hunt, thank you. Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke is in another movie.
I know, that sounds like more of an action movie hero name,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Ethan Hawke.
It was
But no,
taken.
Ethan Hunt does... the movie constantly sets up those moments where you have, a set of circumstances from which there appear to be no exit. And Ethan Hunt comes along and he's like, oh, okay, I got this, guys. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's like, I've got this. And you trust in him to have this. And he always has this. So you're right.
Great.
There's never going to be any real sense of the mission failing. But that's what's so
But it
fun
comes
about the movie.
dangerously close.
Because it constantly looks like it's about to fall apart. And they manage that so well, because everything that they do appears to go wrong, and there's a good dose of luck involved, but at the end of the day, it always comes together. And
Yeah.
but it's that skill of being able to retain the tension, even though we all know that there is no way that the nuclear warheads are going to fall into the wrong hands and destroy the Earth.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise is a very particular movie presence, right? He's always been this charmer with a little smugness about him. And, you want to almost slap that, smirk off his face. And I think he works best of late when he's able to use that, towards the plot.
Absolutely,
Like he
yeah.
made this movie that I loved last year called American Made. Remember where he played this?
I love that movie.
Yeah, it was so good. Where he kind of uses the smugness to depict a character who was like unbelievable. If somebody told us that this was real, you wouldn't believe it. And here again, we are seeing Tom Cruise in the 6th decade of his life. He's 56 in this movie.
He looks amazing.
And he looks beaten up, but he also looks like somebody who has seen a lot and weathered through a lot. And, when he gets punched up nice and good, in this movie. So I think it really works with him, works for him as an actor. And I think the other thing which people don't talk about really is the fact that, Hunt has his own morality, right? He does
Yes.
not understand, or maybe he understands, but he's not able to abide by the concept of sacrificing one life to save millions. For him,
Right.
the one life is just as important as millions. And maybe I'm
Right.
Well,
making
and
too
that's
much
his
of it.
Achilles heel, right?
Well,
That's what's
That is his
exploited
Achilles
in
heel.
this movie.
And every movie it kind of plays to that he is not going to give up one of his own at great peril to everything else, which makes things more complicated. And that gives the movie a nice little weight. And I think the other good thing that Christopher McQuarrie has done is that he has kind of gone back and kind of, because through the last few movies, Ethan Hunt was kind of a cipher. He was just showing up and doing incredible things. And now he's kind of rooting him back to his previous life and, the wife he had to leave behind and so forth. So I don't know. Overall, it seems a more stable kind of endeavor.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at his IMDb. I mean, the guy he's relentless, right? I mean, Jack Reacher, Edge of Tomorrow. I'm just picking out the ones which are all his action movies.
The Mummy.
Yeah, Oblivion, Night and Day, not Valkyrie.
Did any of you see The Mummy?
No.
Okay, I saw it on the plane.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was
Yeah, I
absolutely
wouldn't
awful.
wanna- He doesn't- that
So
doesn't-
I'm just saying he's not a bona fide sure hit.
Yeah.
But
That's what I'm
every
saying.
once
When
in
he
a
does
while,
this action hero, he's great. So let's wind up show number 400. Yazdi.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie should be watched, if only to see. It's almost, he seems inhuman. Tom Cruise does, because he's running on the streets. He seems to be on a bike dodging traffic. He's leaping out of things. There's this one. I thought when I saw the movie for the first time that it was a GoPro, but it's not. There's this one shot where he leaps out of this plane. I don't know how they did it. It's a single shot which goes quite a ways, at least for a couple of minutes, as he's flying down from this.
They did it by doing it.
So it's, I get anxious, with the smallest things, and to think that somebody 10 years older than me is doing this with I'm
They
sure
did
he's
like
anxious
100
too.
jumps to get those shots.
Gosh, so it's just incredible. And I think that nervous energy, you can see it on the screen of somebody doing this for real.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the movie is more effective than most other action films. So I think as an action film, it's a 9 out of 10. But could it be a little bit better, a little tighter with the script, all of that stuff? So I have to cut off like half a point. So it's an 8.5 for me. And right now I'm going to back down to an 8. It's probably the most watchable, most recommendable movie of the year so far. I can just tell anybody. And a lot of people like we know who are like, oh, well, give me the name of a good action film. I'm not interested in all the little movies. This is a good action film that I could recommend to anyone. And again, I do want to give kudos to Rebecca Ferguson, who is so good here. She was, so good in the previous movie as well. And there's this, he almost does a little Lost in translation thing, where at the end the two female characters who kind of love him, they kind of happen to meet and they say something to each other, but you're off from the camera.
Yeah.
You don't see what they're telling each other, which is very similar to that famous Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson last part. So there's little things here and there. It's quite something. 8 out of 10, which seems stingy.
Joe.
My favorite entry in this franchise by a long shot. I mean, for somebody who's generally been ambivalent about these movies, I think I now get what was so fun about them.
You brainwashed Joe.
It just won me over with its sheer relentlessness. It felt,
Plus you like Henry Cavill, who's Superman. So I'm sure the Superman music was playing in your
Henry
head.
Cavill is good, but he needs to be shaved.
I was going to say, he was very different.
He needs to lose weight.
He's very
He needs
different.
to lose
Bulky.
weight. What's that? He's so disgusting. He's so bulked. He looks
He's
like
been hitting the
a piece of
protein
meat.
shakes.
Yeah.
But he looks like a cow.
I know.
He looks like just a
Sorry,
block.
back to Joe's
block of
summing
meat.
up.
He looks like a block of meat, but anyway, yes.
I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
And I don't know why it's not a 10. I mean, it's a perfect movie as far as I'm concerned. I literally don't see anything that they could have done better in this particular entry. It's a slick, Fury Road is such a great yardstick for it, because that's exactly how it felt from beginning to end.
It's impossible not to enjoy yourself at this movie if you choose to accept. Solid 8 out of 10. Solid.
Yeah, and we didn't even...
I feel like it needs its own category. It's not like an 8 out of 10 like movie I gave that an 8 out of 10. It's not like your average 8 out of 10. It's just a
8th grade.
It's a, you know, it's like a
strong,
really good 8 out of 10.
And we didn't even talk about what I think is the best scene in the film. It's in the trailer. It's this brawl, just bare knuckles brawl, which happens in the bathroom.
I was
going to
mention it because the sink like touches Henry Cavill's muscle and just like explodes.
But did you notice? I mean, I didn't even realize that until I saw it the second time. It's not very long, but it kind of leaves a really strong impression.
Yeah.
And there is no background score.
Yes, it's
just
solid,
people beating, people being hurled against the wall. And it's so beautifully choreographed. Go on.
I was going to say, I mean, that was very reminiscent to me of the opening brawl in Casino Royale, the Bond movie.
Yes.
Okay,
I see that, yeah.
And what was particularly reminiscent of me was how much people get hurt. Because I think that was striking.
It was bone crunching.
But what was really striking in Casino Royale was that, we often see these action movie heroes end up in these fights and then they kind of dust off their shoulder, and go on about their business back to the cocktail party. Whereas, Casino Royale, the Craig implementation of Bond in that movie, had bruised. I mean, you could see he was in pain. He had to go patch himself up and have painkillers and recombobulate. So that felt very much similar here, especially when we see one of the characters actually, taken out of the scene.
Yeah. What made me laugh though is that if you were a party goer at that party, they were at the club.
Yeah.
You'd be thinking like, who are these men?
They're so
out of place.
Why are they wearing suits?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a rave party.
I was like, this is so weird.
Why are they wearing suits?
Yeah.
It's Paris. Of course they're wearing suits. All right, well, let's wrap up the podcast. Episode 400. Woo, yay! Here's to 400
How long?
more.
That's probably the longest.
An hour and 10. We did indulge ourselves, but we've got to do that once in a while. So hopefully I will get this uploaded to YouTube at some point, and let us know what you think of the movie format, the video. I know we
the cat made an appearance.
Shied away from doing video in part because it's a lot more work, but
and we have to brush our hair.
And I had to change my shirt. Yeah, Rashmi was complaining about the holes in the shirt that I was wearing before I came on this. So this is a fresh shirt, I will have you know.
Wow.
Yes, it was.
Okay, until our next episode, too many movies, too little time.
Yeah.
And goodbye from me.
And me.
And me as well. Now we shall drink.
Yes.
Yes, well, actually, what is that, Yazdi?
Moscato.
It's so cute.
It's a very, very...
Yeah, and Joe, you missed that Yazdi brought all these things out of his little tiny messenger bag. He was like Mary Poppins. It didn't stop. And then I was thinking, oh my God, our snacks are so not good that Yazdi has to bring us... Funf.
It's not just fun, it's funf. That's German for the number 5 here. I'll see if I can get it on camera there. Funf Moscato. Thank you very much, Yazdi.
Sure.
Right.
No. I felt we should celebrate. That's the only reason why I put everything in the bag.
It's very nice. I was marveling at many things when you...